Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. I almost messed up the intro. Doing our pre-recorded New Year's show. And I'll say that before we even get into the NFL topic that I want to hit on, the college playoff has affected my college football viewership more than I anticipated. Because I know we're going to talk about the ACC laying an egg and some of the other games, but I'm thoroughly confused on like the schedule and who's playing when, and even just doing like holiday visits. I feel like before I always knew like, all right, here are the games scheduled, and it kind of built itself up. Where now the way they did it on like what, that Saturday before, then we've had like a week and a half off. And all these games to me are just like exhibitions that I don't care about. And all I'm thinking about is like, when are we going to get to the next playoff game? And of course, I just keep waiting and waiting. And the viewer numbers came out. NFL beat the college football playoffs head to head, which we knew was going to happen. To be honest, I was a little bit surprised at how well the games kind of did, since they were all blowouts. I think they all had like 14 million viewers or more. To be honest, like the college basketball national championship game averages like what, 15 million? So the football playoffs is a bigger moneymaker right now than the NCAA basketball tournament. I would think that they're going to look at those numbers and say, not that, hey, there were too many blowouts, we need to like reduce the games.
Yeah.
That, hey, we need to have more. With the NFL not budging, I think I brought it up last week, so I'm not going to stay on it too long. I think that what I would like to see is just back-to-back games, where if you win the conference championship game, you get a bye, so you miss a week to kind of reward you. If you lost the conference championship game, you should play the following week in one of those games, like SMU going to Penn State. Let that happen right the week after the Big Ten championship game, the game that's usually the Army-Navy game. Hell, let the Army-Navy game lead into it. Because they've said about, well, we have to respect the Army-Navy game. And okay. And I think they had some type of like thing in there where if they're in the playoffs or whatever, then they might not have to play that game. Do the same thing. Heck, move that game up to like noon and have that be the kickoff. And then that way we at least have a couple of different games. Like have the Army-Navy game, kick it off, and then have like 2 or 3 games on at the same time. And then the following week, then we would have the round that we're coming here where it's already like down to 8 teams, or if they expand it more, it would be whatever. Because I think last week I laid it out with the expanded playoff. But honestly, they should do it right now. Because think about it. We would have already been down to what? Would it have been the Final Four again? Just like in previous years, where New Year's Eve and New Year's Day would have been the semifinal games. So we would have already known the winner of Oregon, Ohio State, Arizona State, Texas. They would be playing this week. And then the championship game wouldn't be pushed back so far. I think that would help with the portal and a bunch of other things. So that's what I would like to see. I feel like we're going to go down through a growing pain avenue, though. And it's not because of college football. And that's why I brought that up early. It's because of the NFL. So the NFL did Christmas Day on Netflix, right? Did you have any issues streaming the game? Did you stream it at all, to be honest?
Yes. I did, just because we had it.
Yeah, and we did too. So we watched it. I didn't have any issues.
Surprisingly, I didn't. I thought for sure that we would end up with some kind of issue. And it's like they learned their issue from the Paul Tyson fight, that they got it together. The only thing that really annoys me with it, though, is that you have Amazon games, you have Netflix games, you have your general Fox and CBS games. Like, if you're almost, I feel like at this point if you truly follow the NFL, you're almost better off just bucking up and spending the $500 for Sunday ticket and just going that route, because otherwise you're going to end up spending just as much on your 17 different streaming options to get the games that you want anyhow.
We'll see. Did those games? Do you have that? Did those games show up on there?
Well, like the Thursday night games were Amazon.
Yeah, are they still on Sunday Ticket though?
I would assume so. I know for a while when I had, now this was a long time ago, like in the earlier stages of Sunday Ticket, but when we had it, when we were living down south, it made it easier for us. Like we got it because I wanted to make sure we got all the Steeler games, and that was before they had all the different streaming options. Maybe they restrict it now and you're forced to go the streaming route.
That's what I'm wondering, and I honestly don't know the answer. That's why I was asking if you knew, because I think when we talk about college football, that's everyone's complaint with the Big Ten Network. You can pay for the Big Ten Network, but that doesn't get you a game on Peacock or whatever other random one they're throwing it on, Paramount Plus. And so then you have to have those networks. So if the NFL does it the same way, which it seems like they're trying to do, because that's how they can sell it to the streaming networks. Because they talked about how it was like, oh, Netflix most watched game, the NFL's like most streamed game, but the viewership was down. Like it was down from last Christmas or whatever. And it's a relatively new thing, because I was trying to tell people we were watching with, they were surprised that like Beyonce was there. Honestly, I was surprised too. And Netflix like probably paid for that. And they said like that's when it peaked with like the Beyonce halftime, because I think the same thing. Football fans aren't paying to watch the game. Random Netflix people might have just like, hey, we're going to tune in because I don't want to watch football, but I see that Beyonce's live when I signed into Netflix, right? So I might as well click on that. And that's where I think the streaming from like the Paul Tyson fight, everyone jumped on at the same time, like right before the Tyson Paul fight. The earlier fight, just in case it was a knockout, they didn't want to miss it. And so they got hammered not being able to scale up. With football, I think people are just randomly tuning in like throughout the earlier, like the pregame. And so Netflix is easier to kind of handle that, because it's not like, oh, we don't want to make sure we're missing like this key moment. No one really cares for the NFL. They're just putting it on as something on for like background noise on Christmas, right?
Now, I was surprised that I didn't see it. Maybe it did play on the local channels here, but when I was looking to see what channel it was going to be on, it wasn't registering on the local channels at all. So when it came time for the actual game, I was like, ooh, I need to make sure. I knew that we had Netflix, so I just pulled it up and started watching it. But I thought, oh, that's a possible issue there.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I brought my tablet just in case I could throw it up if I needed to stream it up to the TV, because I knew if it's on Netflix, it's not on regular, like local channels. And that's where I think a lot of people are getting annoyed, because you're right. Steelers games, if you have one on Peacock, one on Paramount Plus, one on Amazon Prime, one on Netflix, you have to pay for all of those to get all the Steeler games. Where in the past, every Steeler game was just local, right? Like I can get most of the Panthers games, but I know for a fact that if the Panthers are on streaming, they're not on local TV. It's part of the new expand. I think that's why they kind of expanded the schedule, because they knew to get out of like those local TV deals, they promised them like, hey, you're going to get whatever amount of games. We're going to put one on streaming though. We'll just add an extra game to the schedule. Everyone makes money. Everyone's happy. Netflix, like for them, surprisingly, that's where the Big Ten, I've been arguing with other Michigan fans about this. They keep saying like, well, what if Peacock just becomes a Big Ten network? I'm like, good. Let it absorb it, because then at least I know where the games are going to be. Like if I try to watch Michigan hockey, it's a mess right now. Got to have Big Ten Network, got to have Big Ten Network Plus. Some games are only on Michigan's like website. Like if it's like an early season game, some of them are on whatever, like the normal like TV channels. So you got to be everywhere, and that's like a lesser watched sport. So the bigger football ones, I'm not really too concerned about, but I am worried that like, hey, I got the Peacock subscription or whatever. I know for a fact Michigan's going to have one Peacock game every year. Like, let's just be real. I'm not going to be naive and say, yeah, they won't pick us. No, they're going to pick Michigan. So I'm kind of screwed there. If I was a fan of like Indiana or something, hey, maybe we luck out and we don't have to have a game on there. Maybe because we are Indiana, I got to watch 3 games on there. I don't know. Like every time Ohio State plays on there, they're not pitting Ohio State, Michigan on there, or Ohio State, Penn State, right? They're going to be putting Ohio State, Indiana, or some other lesser team on there just because. So with the NFL, you don't have that kind of consistency. Your team's good. Hey, they can move you and put you on Christmas Day. The Chiefs right now, their fans, they have to watch everywhere for their team. They've been on so many weird night streamings that it's annoying to me because then I catch so many Chiefs games that I really don't want to watch. Right? Oh, another Chiefs game I got to sit through? Great. And then I just don't end up watching, and that's kind of where the fight is, because like, hey, if the game's a blowout and it's not a team I care about, like what was it, the second game, Ravens, Texans, was that game a blowout? I can't remember.
Yes.
Why am I watching this? It's the same thing with bowl games. I wanted to watch Colorado play BYU. Figure out I've been high on BYU all year. Of course, way better. I can't believe they lost to Kansas or whatever team they lost to be eliminated, right? And then they're hammering them, and it's a blowout. And I'm kind of like watching Colorado just do like NFL type show off plays, because they were treating it like a glorified scrimmage, which I understand. Why are they caring? Right? And then I thought, I'm not watching this anymore. Same with the NFL. Like late season, oh, guys are sitting? Awesome. Guess who I don't have to watch? Right? I watched a Packers game, and I was a little bit annoyed because they're making so many bonehead mistakes. They had a chance like late in the game to get a stop and get the ball back, and they leave a guy uncovered in the flat on 3rd down. And I know the game was meaningless for the Packers, really, because playoff seeding, it really doesn't matter. The Vikings are fighting for that top seed, so it mattered for them. So it'd have been funny to play spoiler, but I thought, man, you're getting ready for playoff mode. You need to be able to make plays like that. The Vikings are choking the game away. They're just choking the game away. Doinking field goals, doing whatever. All you have to do is make the stop, kick a field goal, and the Packers win, and it would be hilarious. Instead, they let the guy catch it. I think it was your boy Akers. And the flat fell down. Barely caught the ball. It was a bad pass by Sam Darnold. And I think Sam Darnold's on a 1-year deal. Because, like, what do you do with him? I would assume that they're not going to throw him, like, a huge contract. I honestly, for J.J. McCarthy's sake, man, ride the bench a few years. Like Aaron Rodgers, what's the difference? Like, take it in easy. You're not going to have your confidence shaken like Bryce Young. Take it easy. Let Sam Darnold do it. They said that he's practicing with VR. JJ is, where he watches like the plays through Sam Darnold's progressions, and he's been like able to kind of recreate. They can check it based on like his head movements, to where I don't know how true this is, but they said like he's making the reads faster than Sam Darnold himself in the game, and I'm like, that's so funny. Like, could you imagine being the starter and they have the data to show like, hey, here you are, and here's JJ just sitting on the bench like doing it better than you are, and we're winning, right? They're winning. So like, do you get rid of them? Because that's what happened with Nick Foles and Wentz. I always said Eagles should have just kept Foles. Who cares if things fall apart? He won the Super Bowl. He deserves that chance. Instead, they went with Wentz, and he fell apart. Right, and then Foles could never find a system that like fit him as well as that Eagles championship run. And so he kind of bounced around and disappeared. But Wentz was ruined but they had already had so much money in them. That's what I'm wondering. Like, yeah, they can throw like these weird VR stats out, but if JJ comes in and he sucks, and Sam Darnold, I mean, this is basically Sam Darnold's year. You're telling him, this is your year to win the Super Bowl, dude. You might only have one chance. You don't want to Tony Romo butt fumble it away, because then you'll just be in the booth, sad, talking about people having playoff success. Right? That's what it sounds like when I listen to him. So I don't know. I feel like that game, they have some big games on, but throwing games on Netflix, man, and they're blowouts, you're not convincing me to buy Netflix. Or same with the Thursday night games. Some of those games are just so bad, I'm not going to watch them. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, the NBA did the same thing. They're bragging about their Christmas Day numbers. They were just as bad as the NFL's drop. And then they try to like pretend it was like up against NFL games on ESPN or something that they did comparatively well. And it's like, yeah, but the head-to-head game on Netflix, you guys did worse than. And you're not even streaming. You're on ABC or whatever. Just no one cares. Like the NBA TV ratings, I just don't understand it, because eventually the cash flow has to stop. If the TV networks keep losing money because they're afraid that if they don't get live programming, people aren't going to watch it real time, and they're just going to DVR everything or watch it on demand and skip the commercials, yeah, that's a real threat. But overpaying has to stop. There's only so much merch. I saw people complaining that like Fanatics, even selling merch, because like now they're kind of like a monopoly, right? So they get like all the license deals, and then they're not making money. So then they're cutting costs where it's like jerseys aren't even stitched numbers anymore. You're better off just buying a knockoff and getting a better quality. Like, could you imagine? Hey, your kid really wants a jersey. You bought it from Fanatics. It feels like something you found at Big Lots, dude. Like, where did you guys make this? There's a guy in the back. Print them up right now.
I got my jersey at Buc-ee's.
Yeah, a truck stop. You go down the highway. It's like, hey, isn't that jersey you like? Why is it all crooked? Like, yeah. So I don't know what, like some of the stuff, like sports, they're going towards like a torpedoed head where if the streaming stuff doesn't work out, they can't go back to TV and demand more money. Right? Like the streaming is throwing extra money at them because like Netflix needs people to stay subscribed. You can they only put new shows out like every couple months that are worth watching. Right? And if you wait, you can pretty much just binge watch all your shows and rotate the streaming apps. You don't need to have Netflix every month. Like, honestly, you could just wait, get it like maybe 2 months out of the year, and just rotate between the streaming apps. There's no difference. They even give you deals to come back. I think that's like what the Hulu one was. Like, you're better off just canceling, waiting a month for Black Friday, and then signing back up. The same thing with like Apple TV or whatever. Like, you can do all of them like that because they're not consistently putting out new shows. The only way they can get you consistently is if they have sports on there. Peacock had the Olympics. They had Big Ten football. Now they're going to be showing like Big Ten basketball. If you're a fan of a Big Ten team, it might make sense to have that. The Olympics are every, 4 years? So you're not going to stay subscribed for 4 years waiting for the next Olympics. And they know that.
Unless you forget about it. Like, that's why I just don't even sign up for the free trial, because I'll never remember to delete it. I'll be like, oh yeah, I still do have that subscription.
See, I just put it on like a calendar. So like a week before, it's like, hey, yo, just cancel this. And I make sure I put it like every day that week, so that if I forget or I get it and I'm like doing something, go back and cancel. And then sometimes they're like, you want another month for $1? I mean, they don't really do that too much anymore. Same with like people, everyone was trying to pitch me to buy YouTube TV. I don't watch TV. Who has time in their day as a grown man that works to like just watch live TV? I mean, if you're watching like cable and stuff, but even the price, like when it was $30, okay, that's not too bad a month. It's like quadrupled in price where it's like going up to like 80 or $90 a month. And then pretty soon it's going to be 100 something a month. And that's just the base package with like HGTV and crap that you could just go to, who knows, a department store and watch in the like dressing room. They like have that shit on. Like you go to like your mechanic and it just has like the most generic like home swap TV show on. That's like what you get with the base YouTube TV. You might get like ESPN 1 or something. Some of them even split it where you either get Fox Sports or the Big Ten Network or you get ESPN and the SEC. Okay, great. I'm not buying both, dude. I'm a Michigan man, so I'm getting the Fox one. Even if I was even going to get it. But sometimes it's like not even worth it. So how are you going to convince me that it's worth that much money? Because like, and then to your point, add $20 Netflix or whatever it is. It's like $6 if you watch the ad one. But add that on top every month. And then add in Hulu or Disney Plus or Peacock or Paramount Plus or HBO. What's the other one? MGM has their own now. And then Prime Video. Even if they were all $5, that's like another $30 worth of streaming.
Yeah.
And they're not. They're like $10. It's insane. ESPN Plus, I dropped that. I talked about it a few weeks ago. Now, have I missed it at all? No. Like, and I think they know that people are dropping it because they started to add it to like the Hulu or Disney Plus like part where it's like in the middle of going through your programs or looking for what's on a random sports game. Like, no, I don't need that under a Disney Plus kids profile, right? If I'm looking for my kids to find like one of their shows, I don't want to skip some crappy basketball game that they're not going to watch ever. Like, get that out of there. My kids aren't going to subscribe to watch some SEC Alabama taking on Tarleton State or something and like lacrosse. Like, get that out of my feed. Why am I watching that? You had the chance when ESPN Plus, when I tried to watch it for like NC State and other ACC games, and they were all blacked out. You can't, same with hockey. Could I watch the Hurricanes on there? Oh, hell no. They're blacked out. So they asked me in like the survey, like, why are you canceling? All the shit's blacked out, dude. You want me to pay you and then start to just randomly like another team, which is hard because if you have kids, hey, Dad, can we go to a game? My favorite team is like Vancouver. It's like, oh, yeah, dude, let's just fly up there on a whim. I mean, we have a good team right here in Carolina, right in Raleigh. And they're like, oh, yeah, but I can't watch that one. I don't get to see them play, so I don't like them. Oh, yeah, they're blacked out. Thanks. And my kid likes some other random team. That's exactly what I want to pay ESPN Plus for the privilege for. Right? Give me a break. So that's my holiday. Watching sports. Don't know what channel anything's on. Nothing's consistent. At least the bowl games are all like on what? ESPN? Great. Great work, NCAA. Yeah. Great work. Like, why not split it up? Because you know ESPN's not giving them the best deal. It's like the easiest deal. Hey, we'll give you this much if you give us all the content. And the NCAA is like, okay. Or the conference are like, yeah, that works for us. We're lazy. We don't want to bring in other networks. And then meanwhile, the Big Ten brings in other networks and then makes more money. And the SEC is crying about it. Oh, yeah. Well, guess what, guys? They have 3 networks working together. Of course, if you have 3 pots of different money coming together, they're going to make more. Until ESPN brings the SEC up to par, I'm not believing anything they say with the playoffs. I'm just not. And I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to pay for like extra ESPN Plus or whatever to watch some of these crummy bowl games. Between like 6-6, A&M blowing a lead or something. I don't even know what A&M was doing. Blowing it. They had a chance to be in the playoffs. If they wanted me to watch them, make the playoffs, dude. Get rid of the bowl games. They should just get... that's what I don't know. If they expand the playoffs, get rid of the bowl games. Some programs might not make it, though. Okay. Then drop down to FCS or whatever.
Well, I mean, they've already established that a lot of the stuff that goes into the seeding that affects who gets into it is already tainted from the get-go. So you're already having issues with that. So, I think you're almost close to having it just be the Big Ten SEC Invitational. Um, and I think that's what's going to drive more revenue. That's going to drive all this other stuff because they've already poached a lot of programs that may be the win-win, that the NCAA gets their slice of the pie. Inevitably, they get one of the blue bloods to be the winner that's going to fill the stadiums. They're going to get their in-house money. And, to them, that's going to be the big win-win.
Well, see, that's why if they just expand it to at least 16 and get rid of the bye, like that extra space, get rid of the extra space. Heck, I mean, honestly, if they're going to do 16, why not just do 20? If you want to keep the Power Four or whatever, the Big Four conference champs, give them the bye. Like I said, if they win the conference champs, give them a bye. Let the other like the lower conferences play. Because why does Penn State deserve a week off? Like they don't. I mean, they played the conference championship. They lost. They had a chance to earn it. Let them play the MAC champ. If Penn State's not good enough to beat the MAC champ, then who cares? Plus, then you're naturally building in a way. Penn State plays every week anyway, right? So their players are used to it. It's not like they're going to have to bend over backwards to get ready for the MAC champ. The MAC champ's not getting a bye because they had 9 wins or whatever. So let that happen. Let me watch the football, and then it matters, and then you're taking that out of it. And if it ends up being like college basketball tournament, who cares? Because the basketball tournament's great. You have early round upsets, or at least games that are close they're going to be great. When it gets to the Final Four, that's kind of the ultimate goal for some of those smaller teams. Think of
But I mean, let's look at the NFL tried to build this out, and there's a lot of people out there that say that the NFL is rigged and that they already predetermined who they want to be their big winners. If this was any indication, they had the Texans who were potential division leaders. They had Baltimore that is contending for the AFC North. They had Pittsburgh and Kansas City. They had 4 potential teams that in the preseason you're thinking could be viable conference champions, if not battling for top two seeds within the AFC. The games weren't close. They were 2 beatdowns. And that was the NFL handpicking who they, quote, think were the best teams to be their focus highlight games for the showcase. And it was 2 beatdowns. So, even when you have these people that are handpicking who they want for these primetime games, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to have this close scoring affair. And I think that's the thing that's always been overlooked with this, is that there are people that are saying, oh, this team got blown out. Well, guess what? Anyone can get blown out. There's this big deal. Oklahoma lost to Navy. Who saw that one? Who had that one outside of people that really watched the service academies?
Well, see, I think the same thing. If you're taking away the bye week, because right now the way it's set up, the more talented team, like an Ohio State, is going to be able to regroup after a Michigan loss and not being in the championship game. They have 2 weeks to fully be pissed off and prepared, and then crush a Tennessee. The Rose Bowl could be in a totally different game. Maybe they were so pumped after that game, they haven't been able to focus. We won't know. There's such another long layoff. Oregon's had such a long layoff. Maybe they come out, they're not even focused anyway, and Ohio State kills them. I think getting rid of the extra spacing, and I brought up the portal, it's so much better. SMU loses to Penn State pretty bad. Guess what? Their season's done early December. They can go back to focusing on school, finishing up finals or whatever. Then they have time to enter the transfer portal. They can be with their new team, doing whatever they want to do, right? Who cares? And then because there's extra games, they're just going to be closer. Penn State's not going to want to show their best stuff against the MAC champ. They're just not. So it's going to end up being just a closer suffocation type game that people have seen Michigan play in the past against some of those lower teams where it's where they're not crushing them. It's yeah, they ran the ball 80% of the plays. They're not trying to. They're keeping stuff in their back pocket. And maybe it's a false flag type feeling, but it's not going to be what we saw. And then if by nature, just the extra games, you're going to have the best team show up. If Clemson can fight through and win the national championship, awesome. But it gives them a chance, not in the SEC or the Big Ten, some other schools to get hot. You see it in basketball, like Texas Tech and Baylor, like winning it. Who would pick at the beginning of the year in basketball, like that those schools? I don't know if Texas Tech ever won the national championship though, but like who would have picked them to like get there, right? I mean, Michigan got there a couple of times with like lower ranked teams just because they're playing as a team. They might not have the talent to win night in and night out in the Big Ten. I think you're going to see the same thing in football, like TCU getting in there. If they get blown out of the national championship game, who cares? They deserve to be there. It's not some guy in the back room saying, well, we're going to put in A&M. Or like to your point, Oklahoma. Then they get drawn up against Navy and lose, and people are like, what the heck happened? Like, why did they lose that game? But they played it. They won it on the field. Same with like Penn State. If they beat Boise, who cares? Boise deserved to be there. Who would you have rather had the bye for Penn State to play? Clemson? They lost to Texas. Like what? If you're just delaying a loss, who cares? They're not going to win Clemson didn't have enough to win the championship game. If they had the bye, would they have won the national championship game? No. They couldn't get past Texas. They're eventually going to play a Texas team or a better in the playoffs, whether they had Boise's bye or not. If Boise State gets killed, maybe Penn State's just pretty good, right? And they're one of the top 4 teams. So it doesn't really matter. If Boise upsets them, maybe Penn State wasn't one of the top 4 teams, you know? Maybe Boise is. They only lost to Oregon by a point or two. I don't remember what the score was. So like the NFL, yeah, random stuff happens. You can handpick games, get the Chiefs in there. That's why like they kept showing that graphic about how the Chiefs have so many like 1-score wins. And if they flipped it, they'd have like one of the worst records. I think you sent me it too.
Yeah.
Right? So they keep showing that on the broadcast. I don't know if you've seen it. It's like they have the most 1-score wins of all time or something. And it's like, first off, the season's longer. So give me that break. Same with like Saquon Barkley. Was it Dickerson? He's like making a run of his record. And they asked him if he was going to cheer for Saquon. He's like, hell no. I thought it was like the funniest thing because he knows it's not the same. You keep adding extra games. Why is the record like not prorated or something? Right? Yeah. I know that over time, no one's going to remember Eric Dickerson. Right? So it's better for the youth if Saquon has the record, because then that's someone they grew up with and they can relate to. But who cares? Same with like the home run record. Like people pretend like Barry Bonds doesn't have it. Is anyone else even close? Like what kind of loser just pretends like their own record in their head? Like, yeah, you know what? My home run king is someone else. It's not Barry Bonds. Like, okay, cool. Awesome. You're delusional, dude. It's like Bama fans claiming all those weird natties. And it's like, okay, yeah, didn't you guys lose the bowl game that year or whatever? It's a different time. We can claim it. That's why I still agree. Everyone should claim it. Make whatever records up you want. They keep like finding other guys in other leagues having like more home runs than Barry Bonds. Like so-and-so should be recognized as a home run champ. It's like, why? Why are you bringing that up? It would be like the Olympics deciding that they're going to give gold medals to like the WWE champs. Like, you know what? We decided we got to give Undertaker like 7 gold medals for his WrestleMania contributions to the sport. Right? Because like, oh, like it'd be like if some new wrestler came up, like swept every event like a Michael Phelps, but they didn't like him. They're like, you know what? We got to give Undertaker his due. It's time. That's how Barry Bonds must feel. Like, hey, I worked really hard. They accused me of like doing steroids. And did I ever get banned or anything? I'm like, no. Like they had weird reports of like strange erotic cream rubbings on him, right? Like who writes that report? Some like bald fatty for Sports Illustrated because Barry Bonds didn't give him an interview one time, right? A-Rod. Oh, he did pay. He did get tested positive. Oh no, he's on MLB TV. He's cool now. Like they're good with them. They don't erase his home runs, right? He's one of them. He's a journo now. They go after Barry. They're like, that's why I'm just waiting for them to be like, you know what? We're gonna count Otani's little league home runs towards his records. He's the new home run champ. Sorry, Barry, we don't have proof of you hitting home runs in little league. You're out. The new guys are in. That's like they're just gonna make the records whatever they want to be. Eric Dickerson, I hope you stay pissed off, dude, because that's funny and that's good for the sport. Having some of these old guys get some face time other than just like commercials of them being too old to play with Jerry Rice and Emmett Smith, Dan Marino. So I don't know. With the playoffs, do you still think it's the Chiefs to lose?
Yeah, it's the Chiefs until it isn't.
I feel the same way. And
like I think they, they had a pretty dynamic offense to begin with, and then they added DeAndre Hopkins, and I just think there's so many weapons that they have at their disposal right now that I just think that there's a lot that they're having to account for.
And the defense might not be as good, but as long as your quarterback is calm under pressure and he's comfortable winning close games, it doesn't matter, right? The defense is going to be good enough in the NFL to make some stops.
Well, and I think you brought this up earlier where we're looking at what do you do with the quarterback, and the NFL is so quarterback central that I don't think it hurts you to carry multiple quarterbacks or to have multiple potential quarterbacks in the wings, because the last thing that you want is to be in a scenario where your quarterback gets hurt and then you don't have a quality backup. I think there's people right now that are questioning the Steelers and why Justin Fields isn't getting another chance to lead them, and it's like it's always better to have two competent quarterbacks.
Yeah, they want to see the Justin cat. Or, I don't know what else you'd call it with Fields in there. But you need a mix-up. That's why, like, Chiefs, when they had Chad Henne, it's like, oh, Mahomes went down. Here's 90-year-old vet Chad Henne walking out there like Julio Franco. Like, the Braves bring him up. He's, like, super old, but he's, like, jacked because all he's doing is working out all day as the backup. Like, yeah, that's a good guy to have out there. Having, like, no backup plan and your guy gets hurt, then your season's down the drain. So I wanted to bring up Aaron Rodgers because he's been in the media now, kind of like taking like jabs at the Jets ownership. It's like, dude, you're brought in to go to the playoffs as a guaranteed Tom Brady type. You're just a loser now. Like Aaron Rodgers is a bona fide loser. Worse than any Peyton Manning performances, right? I know he got hurt last year, but this is your best year where you're supposed to take him to the playoffs. Everyone had the Jets like having enough talent to be winning the AFC North. And they win 4 games, maybe more if they like, depending on how the rest of the season goes. And he's saying like, maybe they'll bring me back. If I was a Jets fan, I'd be like, that's a no from me.
Yeah, kick rocks.
Get out of here. I said it that the Packers wasted more time with him because you could see it watching the games where, oh, here's Aaron Rodgers out there doing nothing. He gets hurt a little bit. Jordan Love comes in. The team moves right down the field. And that's why I think last year was the team that the Packers had enough where they could have won it all. And then Jordan Love threw that ill-advised interception against the Niners. And I just wondered, like, if they had turned to him a little bit earlier and got rid of Aaron Rodgers and pushed him out, would he have had enough experience? Because I think the Packers' defense last year was better. They had like one of the best defenses in the league. So all he had to do was not force it late in that Niners game. They beat the Niners. And then, boom, up against the Chiefs. Maybe they can get it done. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're just one of the other NFC losers. But now the defense isn't there and the Packers are just kind of meandering around. You can't pass up the chance. Aaron Rodgers now, his legacy is what? One Super Bowl and then a bunch of like just fluffy stats. Like no one cares about that, dude. Win some games. I'm still mad that one playoff game against the Niners, like they had no offense and they lost like 13-7 or something. You're telling me you're one of the best passers of all time and you can't move the ball at all? Get out of here. Jets got what they deserved with him. I mean, I was high on him for fantasy, like in terms of the Jets, but it's clear that he's fallen off. If they bring him back, that's a lost season next year. I don't think there's any chance of them even making the playoffs. I mean, I could be wrong. Who's the team that lost to the Giants today to get eliminated from the playoffs? Is it the Colts? Like, how bad do you have to be as a head coach to lose to that Giants team? Like, they gave up like 40-something points. Since I was talking about defense, that's what it made me think of. To the Giants. The Giants are hot garbage. And your team's in the playoff hunt. We won't show up and get eliminated. I don't even know who their coach is, but they showed him on the sideline. He just had like the Ryan Day look on the sideline after the game. And I thought, man, they should fire you right here and see what happens. Like, why not? Why not? That goes back to the quarterback thing. Cause like, didn't they have Richardson go down? And then who was the backup? Was it Flacco? They had like one of those old guys.
Yeah, right? They had Flacco.
I couldn't remember if it was him or Andy Dalton. Because wasn't Dalton playing? Oh, no, he was with the Panthers, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you have these old guys come in, and then they play good, and then eventually you're like, well, we're eliminated from the playoffs. Might as well let our rookie get killed some more. Or, like, our young guy, right? Awesome. Great work, guys. That's what I look forward to when I'm watching football. Quarterbacks that just getting killed. And young guys that like, hey, let's look and see what happens. What was the team that won? Was it the Raiders? And they were like, look, we don't care about a draft pick. We care about winning. You care about winning now? Little late. Little late.
Do you think Dion goes to Vegas?
You think he's going to jump to the NFL?
Do you think that's what I'm asking you? Do you think he jumps?
To be honest, the jump from the NFL to the NFL is hard. There's only been a handful of coaches that have been good. Was it Switzer, Harbaugh,
Jimmy
Pete
Johnson,
Carroll, and Jimmy Johnson? I think there's 4. ESPN said that have coached in a Super Bowl and a national championship game. I think they've all have won both except for Harbaugh so far. He's been to the Super Bowl and he lost. So if they win the Super Bowl, like it's a very exclusive club. So for Dion to jump up, I feel like he maybe could. But his thing is motivating.
But see, I wonder if he's going to be like a LeBron. He's just going to jump to the NFL so he guarantees like his sons get drafted.
Well, see, honestly, he's kind of a motivator. And normally I would think that, okay, it's not going to work in the NFL. But with college right now, you have to be a salesman like Nick Saban was and a motivator. Where he's coming in and he has to recruit all these players. Right now, he doesn't have a lot of inroads because like then no one really gave him a shot. And the media kind of hates him like Harbaugh. So if he goes to the NFL, you hear from the players every time I see like ESPN's doing like an interview. The Chargers players are talking about how they're having so much fun, how they're actually learning every week, and how they're just focused on winning for the first time. Like I think Dobbin said, the first time in his pro career that he feels like the team has focused on winning. How insane is that for an NFL team, right? I feel like Dion could be the same type of guy as like Harbaugh, where if he can be hands off, bring in coordinators, focus on like the big picture type stuff, planning, keeping the guys hungry. In the NFL, that's half the battle. Like Tomlin can get the guys hungry. That's why they're in it every year. Same with John Harbaugh as well, not just Jim. I mean, the Ravens have been consistently good. I mean, for all the jokes we made about Andy Reid, he's the same way. If you can consistently have the players in a position to win, it doesn't matter the X's and O's. You can bring a guy in. Like, remember when the Chiefs, everyone was like so high on Eric Bieniemy about how he revolutionized the offense? He's been fired from like, what, 3 other jobs now?
Yep.
So Dion can go in, bring in guys, allow them to get creative, but still have kind of like that CEO type overlook on the program because he knows what it takes to win. Some of the coaches just don't know what it takes to win. If you're not around a winning program, like Kirby Smart built his program based on Nick Saban, he knows what it takes to win. Like Pete Carroll, he struggled in the NFL figuring out how to win. Goes to college, figures out how to win. Deion's won. He's won. Heck, didn't Colorado have 10 wins this year? Or did they have 9? What was their record? I feel like they've had a better season than like a lot of other programs that are statistically like higher programs. And you just can't do that. They were 9-4. Like, wouldn't some other programs, like I think that's like NC State's ceiling is 9-4. And they weren't even picked to even get that high. Nebraska, 7-6. Again, I think Nebraska beat them. They would have killed for a 9-win season since Bo Pelini left. Right?
Yeah.
So some of the teams, like even heck, in the SEC, like A&M, for all the hype they had, they ended 8-5. They couldn't even get a 9th win. LSU, I think they might have a game coming up, but they're at 8-4. So, yeah, they lost the exhibition to BYU, which was always weird to me because why are they playing a conference foe in a bowl game? What is that? You just call it the Big 12 exhibition then? I think it was because the Big Ten was out of. I think Big Ten used to be in that Alamo Bowl, right? So I'm thinking the Big Ten had too many playoff teams, so they were out of bowl picks or out of bowl teams at that point. But all right, you get there. Maybe they get to 10 wins, but like, heck, they lost to a bunch of decent teams. Like BYU ends up like 11-2 now. They didn't get a chance at the playoffs. An expanded playoff, they could have got in, and who knows what their defense they might have made a run. So Deion, I think if he follows the same program style that I've been saying Harbaugh should have kind of shifted to, bring in young, hungry coordinators, let them implement their stuff. You motivate the players and help with like the X's and O's over the top. He could win there. I think it could be a disaster like Steve Spurrier if he goes pro and they like bring his son with them, right? Like remember when he was like with the Redskins and they kept bringing in all Florida guys? It's like, what are you doing, dude? Florida doesn't have the best talent every year. And I like Spurrier. Like he couldn't get it done in the NFL. So, yeah.
But I can see that he's going to start trying to make these demands for, like he pretty much already established like who he's going to, like what teams are going to be allowed to talk to Travis and his sons.
Well, yeah, that makes sense, dude. It worked for Eli Manning. Was there any downside to the Eli Manning situation?
No. I mean, other than that, when that all that happened and went down, the selfish side of me felt like there's only so many spots available, or there's only so many like players that get drafted that it should be a privilege to go to certain teams and not tie their hands. And you know, John Elway laid the blueprint down of the benefit of kind of being a dick and not going to certain teams, you know.
Well, some teams stink, though, right?
But look at the Raiders. Do you think that they would benefit from having John Elway or Eli Manning as their quarterback?
Probably. Right? They had Rich Gannon, though.
They did have Rich Gannon, but Rich Gannon was like pretty old at the time, too.
I know. He was old. But, I mean, Eli, yeah. But maybe he wouldn't have been himself. He's up for Hall of Fame. I think he should be in. It'd be kind of weird if he wasn't as a 2-time Super Bowl champ. And they bring in Aaron Rodgers and they're like celebrating him.
Well, and I mean, that to me that's just a weird. It's a weird dynamic. It's like if you don't put him in, like I feel like you're when I saw the list of the potential people that were in, and not to have Hines Ward on there is kind of insane because he like it's like what is your criteria? Like it just goes back to like is it just I'm just a friend of somebody who's voting? Like is that the only criteria that we have is like oh yeah we like this person but we don't like this person?
Yeah, it's the exact same as baseball. They don't like Barry Bonds. They collude to get him out. And it's just like writers that no one cares about. Like people that are like still talking about like sports writers. Does anyone read their stuff anymore? Like I don't know one good sports writer that I'm like, you know what? I really like reading this guy's garbage. Because half it's like AI stuff anyway now. Or it's like very slanted and you can tell like this is a propaganda piece. Like was the guy that did all the ESPN hit pieces on Michigan, like Thamel or whatever his name is. And then he like cried because fans were threatening him and he couldn't be in the game for the Ohio State game. He couldn't go in the stadium. Like what a bunch of garbage is that? So like those are the guys that are voting? These petty dudes? Like, who cares? They could just do it factually by now. Just do the numbers. They have the wins over replacement and everything. Just do it. Because, like, some of the guys that they put in there for, like, Hall of Fame, it's like, all right, like, who cares? Hines Ward? Who knows? Maybe a voter met him in person like me and was shocked by how small he was. Like, you don't match up to your listing. Like, you're supposed to be much bigger than this.
Oh no, he's definitely much bigger now.
I meant height wise, bro.
Have you seen him in the UFL? Like he's like double his size. He's like Jerome Bettis size now.
Yeah, but he's not a taller unless he got lifts done. Or you know, you can go to some countries and they'll break your legs and then put splints in so that the bone grows so that you grow a couple inches taller.
Well, that doesn't do me any good now.
Why not? One day you could be an average man height. You go home and say, guys, I'm going to be away for a while. They're like, Dad, where are you going? I gotta grow from a manlet to a regular man size. I gotta go how my legs broke. They're like, that's really weird, but okay. I wonder if work would cover that for people.
It's on my health savings card.
Like, I'm really starting to bend over a little bit. Got some like old man like art going. I better go break my legs to make sure I'm still 6 foot tall. You're on the doctor every year. You're like, I think I'm shrinking a little bit, doc. I need my legs broke. Think you can split them for me? The doctor would be like, what the hell are you talking about? I wonder if some guys like, because remember Michael Jordan used to stretch to decompress his back. And he said like, that's one of the reasons why he thinks he grew. What if that was true? I don't know if you ever heard that. Did you? Like he wanted to be taller. So he said he used to hang. But like, what if that actually did like something? I probably wouldn't, right? I don't know. Do they have
there's people that like shrink?
Though?
I think it works in reverse, so I don't see why it wouldn't have some form of merit. I just don't think you're going to go from like 5'9" to 6'8".
What if you hang the wrong way and you're like crooked? like leaning to the one side. You're like, damn it, I knew I should have strengthened my other arm. Couldn't hold on that long. You're limping down the court.
Or you're looking like Quasimodo.
Yeah, that could be a real thing. You never know. Anything else you want to talk about with the NFL?
I'm trying to think. I think it's going to come up because Pittsburgh did qualify for the playoffs. So, another feather in the organization's cap that at minimum they're gonna be able to see the playoffs again. But I'm curious to see like the one of the more heavier pieces I saw recently on Tomlin is like he's qualifying for the playoffs and he has the record, but like there's nobody on his tree. Like he's been in the NFL for a long time and people have worked with him, but like there's no development of coaches. And I look at the issues that Pittsburgh has is exactly what was going on at Michigan for a while and what Florida State has experienced the last couple of years, where there's these, like, you want to hire guys that are motivated and are bright minds so that they move on from coordinator to head coach, and you want to develop those coaching trees because you're developing more people along the way. Like, we joke about Saban and Belichick's camps, but like they were like machines of turning out coaches and getting guys into better positions. And then just one guy would leave, the next guy comes in, they keep the cycle the same and roll it forward. It's like nobody's leaving Tomlin and going into a better situation. He's not developing anyone. So like I think that's where you're getting the same stale offense. Like whether it's Smith, Matt Canada, like whoever, like you're just not getting solid consistent play period out of anyone.
Well, that's where I think the playoff seeding, I think this year was pretty important for a team to kind of knock the Chiefs off of that number 1 seed. Because with Harbaugh in that division now, you have Tomlin in the playoffs, both Harbaugh brothers, you have the Bills, and then you have the Texans, right? With CJ Stroud and a young team that has a high-powered offense. Maybe that last seed could be someone like the Bengals or something. But realistically, if you want the Chiefs to be knocked off, make them play the extra game. Someone else take the number 1 seed. Like even the Eagles right now, they are a game behind. They could still clinch the division, but the Vikings, with that Packers win, they currently are in the number 1 seed. No one would have guessed that at the beginning of the season. And now if the Eagles have like a chance to get back to the Super Bowl and maybe beat the Chiefs in a rematch, it's going to be 1 game harder unless something crazy happens next week. And then, yeah, the Eagles could end up playing someone like the Falcons or the Seahawks or maybe even the Commanders, depending on how like the last couple games shake out. It's like, all right, they might not be able to beat them, right? Like you don't know. That number 1 seed is important, especially with the Chiefs keep winning and they're winning so many close games. All it takes is one other team to step up, and they haven't been able to do that. And that's kind of where Tomlin, to me, it's like, yeah, the AFC has all these great teams. That's why if I was Jim Harbaugh, why would I want to go to there? Why would I want to go to the AFC? Because you not only have to beat the Chiefs, you have to beat a bunch of other great quarterbacks, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, whatever, and then the NFC champ. That's a hard thing to do. That's a very hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And so, like, Tomlin's in the same boat. Do you have a great quarterback that can get it done? Is Herbert on the same level as, like, a Russell Wilson? Probably right now. Not, like, Super Bowl winning Russell Wilson, right? Looking at old Russell Wilson, Herbert hasn't done anything. So, to get over that hump, to become the guy that does something, it's going to take a hell of a run from either of those teams. That's why, and this is where I was going with the college football thing, I think we're at the point now where some of the teams, like the Steelers, making the playoffs has been great under Tomlin. You have to win a couple games, dude. You have to get to like the AFC Championship game. And maybe the seeding, right now, I think if it played out, they reseed in the NFL, don't they? So if all the top seeds won and the Steelers could play the Chiefs in round 2. But with the reseeding, maybe not. If there's an upset or something, maybe they could meet the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. That's the kind of progress with Russell Wilson here. I think he has to make that step. Otherwise, you have to reevaluate. Do you go with Fields? Do you draft someone? You have to kind of do something. Like the Chargers, on the other hand, with Herbert, they're going to continue to grow, hopefully. Make the playoffs in year 1 under Harbaugh. They have somewhere to go. Tomlin's been there forever. There's nowhere to go. I think the Ravens are in the same boat. Heck, even the Bills maybe. With Josh Allen. How many times are you going to win just in the playoffs and go nowhere? Or in regular season, get to the playoffs and go nowhere? Maybe it's the Patrick Mahomes factor. How many times did Manning lose to Tom Brady? All you have to do is break through once, but if you get to the Super Bowl, you have to win. You can't lose. But that was my last thing. I think that's like college football. Same thing with the expanded playoffs now with 12 teams. I think the ultimate goal for some of these programs like Arizona State, getting to the Final Four would be a big deal, not only for their program, but for the new Big 12 conference. Like the ACC has been so bad in the bowl games with like Miami losing to Iowa State, where you can't say, hey, we deserve 2 teams in the playoff. Get 2 teams in the playoff. They both get killed. And then your conference goes 1-9. I think next year that's going to have a negative effect, whether they want to admit it or not. They can come back unless something happens in the non-conference games, right at the beginning of the year. And I don't know what any of the matchups are next year. That's the only thing that can offset a bad bowl season. Because remember the year that everyone in the Big Ten won except for Michigan? The Big Ten was really hyped up that following year. And then it fell flat on their face. That was like, wasn't that the year like Ohio State was supposed to be the most talented team ever? And they didn't do anything. That's where like the ACC now, no matter how true it's going to be, Big Ten was hyped up, ended up not being true at all. ACC is going to be looked down upon. Doesn't matter if they end up having the national champ in their conference, they might only get 1 team in the playoff because of that preseason bias. And that's kind of what I would like to see eliminated. And it's going to be a little bit hard to do it until it's inevitable. It's honestly inevitable for them to expand the playoffs. You can't be pulling in 14 million viewers and not expand. And I think getting the other teams in, because right now people are still complaining about, well, it's too much Big Ten and too much SEC. The only way to like really get other people in is if you bring automatic qualifiers in from all conferences, I think. You can't just say, well, we need 2 ACC teams in. Why? What if the ACC sucks? Like, let them prove it. And then we might see some of these other, instead of playing like an FCS school, right? Because teams still do that. It would benefit the bigger conferences to play another MAC school. Or like, heck, give like a team like Liberty, and I know they weren't good this year, but like last year they were good. Teams would schedule them just to knock them out in the regular season, right?
Yeah.
Because if you have 2 undefeated like Conference USA teams, you don't want them stealing another bid. So if you already have an automatic bid, look at like Gonzaga in basketball, right? Their conference right now is considered like, or before they're doing their shift or whatever, but whatever conference they were in, the West Coast or whatever, they were considered like a 1-bid conference. Gonzaga had so much success, kind of like Boise State, where if another team won that conference and took the auto bid, Boise State was taking an at-large, or Gonzaga was taking an at-large. Same thing with like Boise State next year. So what's going to happen? Other teams other than Oregon or whatever are going to have to start scheduling them in the regular season, trying to beat them. And I think it's just going to be better for college football all around, right? Why give them any hope if a team like Bama or someone can say, yeah, we'll schedule you a home and home, and then we're going to crush you, and then we're going to go ahead and take any momentum you have as a program, and you can go back to being a 1-bid conference. Why not?
But you're not wrong with that, but I also feel like for a program like Florida State coming off a 2-win season, you're playing Alabama to kick off next year. To go in and knock Alabama off. I mean, you saw it last year, that win against LSU, or 2 years ago. The win against both years, they open with LSU and they win. It didn't really do anything for them because it was like, oh, that was LSU at the beginning of the year. I was like, well, then why play? Why schedule any games if you're going to be like, oh, you lost? Because guaranteed, if Florida State would have lost by like 85 points, that definitely would have been a quality loss. But I feel like if it's an SEC school in particular, and to a lesser extent the Big Ten, you can lose those first couple weeks. And even look at Notre Dame. They lost to Northern Illinois, and it was just kind of like water off a duck's back. Oh, that was early in the year, and it really wasn't that big of a deal.
Well, in the 14 playoff, they would have been out. And that,
definitely.
That LSU game, that USC played them this year and beat them. And if you remember, that shifted the entire Big Ten ranking. I think that's why Big Ten got 4 teams in, because USC beat them, and then people were still having LSU kind of high. LSU has been leading like the SEC for a while, and then they've ended the season on a bad note, I think. But then like Michigan beat USC, and then teams were beating Michigan, and so then it started this cycle. It's like, well, if Michigan beat USC, they might be better than LSU. So like when so-and-so Oregon beats them, then of course Oregon has to be the best, right? Because LSU has a chance to be in the SEC championship game. We can't discount that. And then finally Michigan goes around and beats Ohio State, but it didn't really matter because they beat USC too, and USC beat LSU. And I think that matters whenever you have that type of thing, because you can look at it like Texas beating Michigan didn't have that much of an impact because Michigan ended up not being good, and Texas was one of the SEC best schools. So like, of course that makes sense for them to beat them, right? So like next year, if Florida State out of the ACC though beats Bama, that would send shockwaves. And honestly, I think that would put Bama fans on notice that their school's fallen off. I don't know if you saw, but Bama's been circling the wagons on the NIL stuff. They have been saying that they're getting outspent. It's the funny thing is, Michigan took a couple of Bama transfers, and every article I read was like, yeah, of course Michigan got them. They were able to spend way more on NIL. Like real bitter. And it made me laugh because for years it's been known, heck, even in basketball, that schools are paying athletes. The FBI looked into it, had solid proof. Michigan got hammered for the Fab Five. No one came back and said, you know what? We found out that all the schools were paying. We're sorry that we've been scrutinizing you guys for a while. NIL's back. Michigan, of course, now they don't circle the wagons, dude. Let's go crazy. For years, Michigan had been like under the microscope because of the Fab Five. Now that NIL's normal, like let other schools complain that Michigan's throwing money around, because that's basically what all NIL is. If you can't bring the guys in, I think it's good for the sport. If Florida State's able to nab a guy from Alabama and Michigan's able to take 2 of their former 5-stars away, and then someone else comes in and scoops another 5-star away, great. Bama shouldn't have 17 5-stars on their roster, right? Let them transfer to other schools. That's like, it's like insane, because I think it was like a defensive tackle or someone and a running back that was like both former 5-stars. And then, of course, on the transfer portal, once they committed to Michigan, they like got rated as a 3-star. Awesome. Yeah, great work, guys. The running back from the Rose Bowl last year, 3-star. And didn't have any impact when he's like running dudes over for touchdowns. None at all. Bring him in, baby. Rate him a 1-star. I don't care. Maybe that'll motivate him. So that's what I would love for Florida State to knock them off, because that would throw them into a feeding frenzy. People laughed when I said, wouldn't it be weird if Bama tried to join the Big Ten? Not having money to compete with the Big Ten is one easy way to get them to leave the SEC. And if Alabama leaves the SEC, then what? Right? People thought I was joking when I said there's such a huge gap between the Big Ten and the SEC right now. When NIL comes in and you have other boosters, when you can say, we make $20 million more than the SEC, we can just pay all of our guys part of that $20 million as a flat rate, NIL, right? A stipend. And guess what? The SEC can't match. They can't match it. So it's only a matter of time before they're complaining to ESPN or all shit breaks loose, right? That's why I've been saying if Florida State could jump in the Big Ten, it would be funny. It would be funny. Get the money, start to throw it around. The Big Ten is missing some South teams badly. I don't care if it's Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's been playing pretty well. I think they lost their bowl game, but who cares about bowl games, right? Anything else you want to talk about today?
There's one last thing that I have, and there was the 5-star lineman that flipped to LSU. I don't know if you saw the interview recently with him.
No, I didn't.
But basically after Florida State had fired a bunch of the coaches, he was still committed to Florida State, and he said, I guess he essentially reached out to Alex Atkins, who had been fired, and like was saying like, what options should I do? And he's like, oh, the coaches at LSU are really good. Like you'll be in a good spot. So like, if that's true and the NCAA looks into it more, there's a good chance that like he could end up being in more hot water because of like tampering with a player.
They're not going to look into it though. That's the bullshit part of it.
Yeah.
You know they're not, because that's kind of like all the stuff that happened with like the Stallions staying and like other teams getting like the Michigan's like, hey, Purdue's throwing signs that like Ohio State's sharing with everybody. They were like, well, it's not the same. It's not the same, fella. They're not playing for a national championship. You guys are. Got to go after you. Like you can't. LSU, they're nobodies this year. They'll probably just write that off, dude, and blame it like on being like, we got to focus on Georgia. Like, how many off the field issues does Georgia have? What happened to them? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, fair enough.
Absolutely nothing. So that's why, like, if anything happens with Connor Stallions, I'll just kind of be shocked, because it's been like they had that letter for how many weeks now? Has to be close to the 90 days. We should be hearing about it any day. I might have to do an emergency show if something does happen. I'll just be shocked. Because by now, the 90 days, that had to have been like around September or so. October? Sometime in January, maybe February at the latest, we'll hear something. And like this thing. What happened the last time that Georgia sent a guy over to get bids from Florida State? Not that they went after Florida State.
Yeah.
Like, the normal person watching sports, they can see that stuff happen. And then it kind of just is like, well, you hope Georgia's not that good. And then they turn into a dynasty. And then it's like, all right, well, if they're not going to be there, then we're down on Oregon. Would it be enough for a team like Penn State to make the Final Four? Because I've been saying like that's going to be the one that puts you over the edge. Is that enough to get them respect on that level? Florida State like if they beat Bama, I think their respect starts to come back. But right now, for whatever reason, the media looks at Florida State as kind of like a joker they can kind of just push around, just like Penn State. Very similar. Like when they're like, you know what? We want Ohio State in the playoffs, even though Penn State's the Big Ten champ. We'll just change it around for that. Oh, we want Bama in the playoffs instead of Florida State. Let's just make something up. Same exact thing. And that's what's sad. But maybe we'll have some more positive news. We'll see what happens in the next round of playoffs. If there's anything you want us to hit us or talk about, hit us up. Hope everyone has a happy new year, and we will see you next week.